The rain had been falling since before sunrise, a heavy, unbroken curtain that blurred the world beyond the car windows into shifting shades of gray and green. Eli sat in the back seat of his father's aging station wagon, the vinyl seat cold against the back of his legs, his breath fogging the glass when he leaned too close. Drops crawled down the pane in slow, twisting paths, merging into rivulets that trembled before slipping away into the blur of the road. His father kept both hands on the steering wheel, jaw tight, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror as if checking whether the boy was still there. "Not much longer now," he said, his voice low and strained. It was the same reassurance he'd offered 3 times in the last hour, each time with a little less conviction. Eli's mother sat in silence, her gaze fixed out the passenger side window. The light from the dashboard made her face look pale and waxy, like something pressed under glass. The wipers thumped rhythmically, a heartbeat against the drumming rain. They turned onto a narrow gravel road. The sound changed immediately, the hiss of wet tires on asphalt became the uneven crunch of stone under the wheels, muffled by the rainfall. The forest closed in on either side, trees leaning toward the road as though listening for the car. And then, at the end of the drive, it appeared. The house was tall and narrow, its siding faded to a dull gray that blended almost perfectly with the overcast sky. The roof pitched sharply, rain streaming from its edges in glistening sheets. A thin plume of smoke rose from the chimney, curling into the mist. Eli frowned. They'd been told the place had been empty for years. His father parked, killing the engine. The sudden quiet made the rain seem louder. Eli stepped out, his sneakers sinking slightly into the wet gravel. He glanced up at the second floor and froze. For a moment, just a moment. He thought he saw a pale face at one of the windows. Watching. The front steps sagged slightly under their weight, the wood softened by years of rain. Eli's mother hesitated on the porch, her hand hovering above the tarnished brass knob. For a moment, it seemed she might turn back, but then she pushed the door open. The hinges groaned, not the quick squeak of neglect, but a deep, reluctant sound, as though the house itself was protesting their entry. A cool draft met them in the doorway, carrying the scent of damp wood and something darker beneath it, the faint, almost metallic smell of wet earth. The air inside was colder than the rain outside, and it clung to Eli's skin like a second, invisible layer. His father stepped in first, boots echoing on the scuffed wooden floor. "Cozy," he muttered, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His voice seemed to travel oddly in the space, as if the walls caught and bent it before letting it go. The hallway stretched ahead, narrow, with faded wallpaper curling away at the seams. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling, some shaped like strange, crooked faces. Somewhere deeper in the house, a slow drip echoed, 1, 2, 3, then silence. Eli trailed a hand along the wall as he walked. The paint was bubbled and rough, and beneath it he felt faint grooves, almost like scratches. Upstairs, a door clicked shut. He froze, glancing at his parents, but they seemed not to have heard. His father was wrestling a box through the entryway, his mother brushing dust from a side table. "Did you?" Eli began, but stopped when his mother turned and gave him a look, the kind that meant don't. They climbed the staircase together, the steps dipping slightly under their weight. The upstairs hallway was dim, the single bulb overhead giving off a yellow, sickly glow. The smell of earth was stronger here, as if it had seeped up through the floorboards. Eli's room was at the very end. A single window overlooked the trees, its glass streaked with rain. An old iron bed frame waited in the corner, its mattress sagging in the middle. A desk sat against the wall, its surface scratched in patterns that almost looked like letters. As he set his backpack down, a faint whisper rose from beneath the bed, wet, broken, like someone speaking through water. Eli knelt down beside his bed, the cold floor seeping through the thin soles of his sneakers. The whispering was faint but unmistakable, a murmur like water slipping between rocks in a distant creek. He reached out, fingers trembling slightly, brushing the dusty floor beneath. The voice grew louder, a slow, bubbling sound that teased the edges of his hearing. Eli, it breathed, barely audible, like a secret shared between the rain and the earth. His heart hammered so loudly he was sure they could hear it in the hallway. He pulled back just as the whisper shifted, now a soft laugh, watery and broken, sending a shiver crawling down his spine. "Did you hear that?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. His mother stood at the door, face pale, eyes wide. "Not again," she said, her voice tight. Eli looked up at her, puzzled. "What do you mean, not again?" She swallowed hard. "This house, it has a history. The last family left because of the voices." "Voices?" Eli's eyes searched the shadowy corners of the room. "They say the rain calls to those who listen," she continued, stepping inside, pulling the door shut behind her. "You have to be careful. Don't let it get inside your head." The rain outside intensified, hammering against the windowpane, a steady, insistent drum. The whispers returned, almost pleading now, wrapping around the rhythm of the storm. Eli shivered and pulled the blanket tighter around his shoulders. The house felt alive, breathing, waiting, as if it had been holding its breath until they arrived. And somewhere deep beneath the floorboards, the earth shifted again. That night, Eli lay awake beneath the thin blanket, the rhythmic tapping of rain on the roof drumming like a pulse through the house. The dim glow of the street lamp outside flickered through the curtains, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked ceiling. His eyes were wide, fixed on the dark corner near the door. The whispering had faded, but something else had taken its place, a soft, uneven sound, like footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Eli's breath hitched. He wanted to convince himself it was just the house settling, or the rain soaking into the wood. But the steps came again, light, cautious, moving toward his room from the hallway. He held his breath, heart pounding so fiercely it felt like it might burst. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. A long silence. Then, a faint knock. Eli's hand shot out to the bedside lamp, but before he could flick it on, the door creaked open just a crack. A thin sliver of shadow slipped inside. "Eli," a voice whispered, soft and distant, like the last echo of a dream. He stared, frozen, but the shadow vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The door swung fully open now, moving in slow motion. Eli scrambled backward, clutching his blanket like a shield. The hallway beyond was empty, drenched in the dull yellow light of the bulb. Only the rain remained, tapping, pressing, insistent. The next morning, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle, the sky a heavy, iron gray. Eli stood by the front window, watching the droplets race down the glass in endless, twisting rivulets. Outside, the gravel driveway shimmered wet and dark, and the trees shuddered under the low wind. Then, from the edge of the woods, a figure appeared. A boy, maybe Eli's age, or a little younger, stood barefoot on the muddy ground. His clothes were soaked through, plastered to his thin frame. His hair hung in wet strands over a pale face, and his eyes, wide and unblinking, caught Eli's gaze through the window. Eli's breath caught. The boy raised a trembling hand and tapped on the glass. "Hey," Eli whispered, pressing his palm against the cold window. The boy didn't move or speak, just stared with those cloudy, wet eyes. Then, with a slow, gliding step, he vanished into the trees. "Did you see that?" Eli called to his parents in the kitchen. His mother looked up, expression tight. "It's just the rain playing tricks." But Eli wasn't so sure. Later that day, while unpacking, Eli found muddy footprints leading from the back door toward the forest. They stopped abruptly at the tree line, as if whoever had made them had simply vanished. That night, the rain returned heavier than before, thrumming against the roof like a steady drum. Eli lay awake, wondering about the boy, and whether he had followed them inside. The walls seemed to breathe. At least, that's how it felt to Eli as he wandered the house in the early hours, the rain's relentless percussion drumming outside like a heartbeat echoing through his chest. Every creak, every sigh of the old wood sounded amplified, as if the house itself was alive, watching, waiting. His footsteps barely made a sound on the warped floorboards, but somewhere deeper, a soft tapping began to join the rain, slow, deliberate, almost like fingernails rapping against plaster. Eli froze, eyes scanning the dark hallway outside his room. The shadows shifted as the flickering street lamp outside cast brief, uneven light through the window. The tapping moved, circling the walls, chasing the rhythm of the rain. "Who's there?" Eli whispered, voice cracked and small. No answer came, only the tapping, now joined by a faint whisper, unintelligible but filled with urgency. His skin prickled, cold fingers tracing goosebumps along his arms. He backed into his room, slammed the door, and pressed his ear against the wood. The whispering was clearer now, voices like wind through dry leaves, a language just out of reach, calling him deeper into the darkness. The rain hammered harder, drowning out the sounds, yet somehow making the voices more desperate, more alive. Eli's eyes darted to the window, where water streamed down like tears. And for the first time, he understood, the house wasn't just haunted. It was hungry. Days passed like shadows stretching across the damp walls of the old house. The rain never ceased, a constant whisper that wrapped the property in a cloak of gray mist and cold. Eli grew restless, the shadows inside gnawing at him, pulling him toward parts of the house he'd never dared explore. His parents kept busy unpacking, trying to ignore the creaks and whispers that filled the air like static. But one door, at the end of the upstairs hallway, remained locked. It was old wood, warped and swollen from years of moisture, the keyhole dark and empty like a black eye staring back at him. Eli had tried the handle once, just barely, but it wouldn't budge. That night, the rain was relentless, slamming against the roof in a violent chorus. Eli lay in bed, but sleep was a stranger. His ears caught a new sound, a soft scratching, like nails dragging against wood, coming from beyond the locked door. Heart hammering, he slipped out of bed and crept down the hall. The light from his flashlight trembled as he pointed it at the door. "Who's there?" His voice was barely more than a breath. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, then a slow, deep groan as if the house was shifting, settling on some ancient secret. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept past Eli, chilling him to the bone. The rain outside thundered in approval, as if answering a summons he didn't understand. He pressed his palm against the door. It was ice cold, and beneath his fingers, he felt a pulse, faint, but unmistakable. The locked room was alive. The next morning dawned gray and dripping, the rain still falling in a steady, relentless drizzle. Eli sat at the kitchen table, tracing circles on the wood with his finger, his mind tangled in questions he didn't dare ask out loud. His mother's eyes were distant as she prepared breakfast, her hands trembling slightly as she poured coffee. His father glanced at Eli over the rim of his mug, a shadow flickering in his gaze. "You need to be careful, Eli," his mother said quietly, setting a plate of toast in front of him. "This house, it has memories. Things that don't like to be disturbed." Eli looked up sharply. "What kind of things?" She hesitated, then sighed, running a hand through her damp hair. "We didn't want to tell you before. But the rain, it carries more than water. It carries voices, echoes from long ago. If you listen too closely, it can pull you in." His father cleared his throat, joining in with a grim nod. "You saw the footprints outside, right? You're not imagining things." Eli swallowed hard, the taste of cold fear thick in his mouth. "But what do they want?" "No one really knows," his mother whispered. "But they want to be remembered. To be heard. And if you're not careful, they'll take you with them." The rain tapped insistently against the window, a steady, sorrowful beat. Eli shivered, the house seeming to close in around him. Outside, the trees bent under the weight of the storm, shadows shifting beneath the branches as if alive. And somewhere deep inside, the house waited. That night, The rain was louder than ever, drumming on the roof with a wild, frantic energy that seemed almost angry. Eli lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the whispered warnings of his parents swirling through his mind like ghosts. Suddenly, a soft tapping at his window made him sit up. His heart slammed in his chest. He pulled the curtain aside slowly. There, standing just beyond the glass, was the boy from the woods, pale, soaked, eyes gleaming like wet stones in the dim porch light. "Eli," the boy whispered, voice barely louder than the rain. Eli's throat went dry. "What do you want?" The boy's eyes darkened, and the smile that cracked his face was cold and hollow. "To play. Forever." The rain intensified, washing away the boundaries between the world inside and out. The boy raised a hand, dripping water that sizzled as it touched the windowsill. Eli stumbled back, heart pounding, as the boy's form shimmered, flickering between solid and mist. Suddenly, the window slammed shut with a deafening crack. Eli was alone again, except for the pounding rain and the echo of that chilling smile. The storm didn't let up. Hours slipped past in a blur of thunder and relentless rain, each crash like a hammer against the fragile walls of the house. Eli lay curled under his blanket, eyes darting toward the window every time the wind howled. The boy's visit haunted him, twisting in his mind like a dark puzzle piece he couldn't fit. Was he real? A ghost? Something worse? Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness before buzzing back with a weak glow. Eli sat up, heart pounding. From somewhere deep in the house came the faint sound of footsteps, slow, dragging, uneven, moving down the hall toward his door. He grabbed the flashlight on his nightstand, the beam cutting through the gloom. The door creaked open again, just like before. Eli held his breath. A shadow slipped in, formless and shifting like smoke caught in a breeze. "Eli," the voice whispered, barely audible over the storm. The flashlight flickered, then died. In the sudden blackness, the rain's pounding was deafening. Eli felt cold fingers brush his cheek. The next day dawned pale and soaked, rain still pounding steady against the roof like a relentless drum. Eli felt the weight of the night pressing down on him, the dark shadows lingering behind his eyelids. His parents were distant, their faces drawn tight with worry and something unspoken. Eli's curiosity burned hotter than ever for the locked door upstairs, the one that pulsed like a heartbeat whenever he touched it. He crept upstairs, the old wooden floor cold beneath his feet. The hallway stretched long and silent, shadows pooling beneath the flickering light. He tried the handle again. Locked. But today, something was different. A soft scratching came from the other side, slow and deliberate, almost like someone tapping to be let in. Eli's breath caught as he pressed his ear to the door. "Help me," a whisper drifted through. His fingers traced the keyhole, searching for a way in. Suddenly, the house groaned, as if warning him to stop. But the whisper came again, louder. "Please." The rain thundered outside, drowning out the sound of his pounding heart. Eli couldn't shake the voice. The whispered plea echoed through his mind all day, mingling with the relentless drumming of rain. Determined to find a way inside the locked room, he crept back upstairs after dinner, flashlight in hand. The hallway seemed longer, darker, the walls almost closing in beneath the weight of the storm outside. He knelt beside the door, running fingers over every crack, every splintered edge. Then his eyes caught something unusual, a small loose floorboard just inches from the door's base. With a shaky breath, Eli pried it open. Beneath lay a small rusted tin box, heavy with age and moisture. His fingers trembled as he flipped the lid, revealing an old iron key, blackened with rust but unmistakably shaped for the locked door. The rain outside intensified, hammering the windowpane like the ticking of a monstrous clock. Eli slid the key into his pocket and hurried to the kitchen. His mother was staring out the window, eyes glazed and distant. "Mom?" he asked softly. She turned slowly, lips pressed tight. Be careful, Eli. Some doors are meant to stay closed. He nodded, heart pounding, the key burning cold in his pocket as the storm whispered its dark welcome. The rain was relentless, a heavy curtain of water draping the house in shadow and sound. Eli stood before the locked door, the iron key clutched tightly in his hand, fingers slick with sweat despite the chill in the air. He slid the key into the lock, the rusted metal grinding faintly. For a moment, nothing happened, then, with a slow, heavy creak, the door began to open. A cold, damp air rushed out, carrying the scent of earth and decay. Eli's flashlight barely penetrated the darkness beyond. "Hello." His voice sounded small and uncertain, swallowed quickly by the shadows. The room revealed itself slowly, old, forgotten. Broken furniture, walls streaked with water stains, and the floor covered in damp leaves and mud. But deeper in the darkness, something moved. A faint glow, pulsing softly, like a heartbeat. Eli stepped inside, heart pounding. The door groaned shut behind him, sealing him in the cold embrace of the room. Outside, the rain hammered on, relentless and unforgiving. Eli's flashlight trembled in his hand, casting quivering shadows across the room's rotting walls. The glow pulsed ahead, faint but steady, like the slow rhythm of a living heart buried deep beneath the earth. He stepped forward, the damp floor cold and slick beneath his shoes. The air was thick with moisture and something older, something alive, watching. The glow grew brighter as he approached a rough stone in the center of the floor, covered in moss and etched with strange, twisting symbols. The rain's steady drumming outside seemed to slow, falling into rhythm with the pulsing light. Eli's fingers brushed the cold stone, and a wave of whispers surged through the room, voices tangled like the wind in the trees outside. "Remember us," they breathed, echoing in his mind. The house seemed to sigh, walls creaking as if shifting, stretching, alive in a way Eli couldn't understand. He wanted to run. But his feet were rooted to the spot, caught in the spell of the storm and the house's ancient heart. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, hammering the roof in a relentless, endless rhythm. And Eli knew the house was no longer just a home. The rain had become a roar, an endless torrent drowning the world in cold gray water. Eli stood motionless by the glowing stone, the voices swirling louder in his head, riding the storm like an ancient song. Suddenly, the house fell silent, the storm's fury muted like a breath held tight. Then, faint and distant but unmistakable, a voice called through the downpour. "Eli." He spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The voice was soft, yet urgent, carrying a weight that pressed on his chest. "Who's there?" he whispered. The rain pulsed against the windows, and the voice came again, closer now, almost a sigh. "Don't forget us." The room seemed to shiver as if alive. The stone's glow flickered, casting long shadows that danced with the rhythm of the rain outside. Eli's heart thundered, the line between the world inside and the storm outside blurring until he could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. The rain battered the house like 1,000 pounding fists, relentless and unforgiving. Eli's breath came in ragged gasps as he knelt beside the glowing stone, the voices swirling around him like a tempest. His fingers traced the ancient symbols carved into the moss-covered surface. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath him, the stone pulsing like a heartbeat syncing with the storm's rhythm. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room, revealing a hidden crevice beneath the stone. Eli's hand slipped inside, fingers brushing against something cold and metallic. He pulled out an old, tarnished locket, heavy and ornate, damp from years underground. Opening it, he saw a faded photograph of a young boy, eyes wide and staring, soaked in rain. The whispering voices rose to a crescendo, swirling like wind and water, urging him to remember. Eli's heart pounded. The house, the rain, the boy outside, they were all pieces of a forgotten story, a secret buried deep beneath the storm. And now, Eli held the key to unlocking it. Eli stared at the faded photograph inside the locket, the boy's eyes seeming to shimmer even in the dim light. Outside, the rain tapped relentlessly against the window, a ceaseless pulse that matched the pounding of his heart. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room, the air thickening like a fog rolling in from the woods. The whispering voices returned, clearer now, weaving through the steady rhythm of the storm. "Remember us." Eli's fingers tightened on the locket as images flickered in his mind, fragments of a long-ago summer drenched in sunlight and rain, laughter echoing through the trees, and a boy who vanished beneath the storm. The house groaned, walls seeming to breathe around him, alive with memories that refused to fade. "Help me," the voice breathed, soft and urgent, carrying the weight of years lost to time and rain. Eli's eyes widened. The locket wasn't just a key, it was a message, a plea from the past waiting to be heard. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows with furious insistence. Eli clutched the locket tightly, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on him like the storm itself. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark, ghostly white. Shadows leapt and danced on the walls as the house seemed to pulse with a life of its own. A voice, clearer and closer than ever, whispered in his ear. "Find me." The storm's roar filled the house, shaking the floorboards and rattling the window panes. Eli felt a cold breath on his neck, a presence just beyond sight. He turned, heart pounding, but saw nothing, only the relentless rain pouring down, a curtain between worlds. Outside, the boy from the woods stood at the edge of the forest, eyes glowing faintly in the storm. Eli knew the time had come to follow. The storm showed no mercy. Sheets of rain battered the windows, drowning out all other sounds except the relentless drum of water on wood and glass. The world outside had become a blur of gray and shadow, the wind howling like a mournful ghost lost in the tempest. Eli pulled his coat tighter around his small frame and slipped out the back door, his boots sinking slightly into the muddy earth. The air was thick with wetness and the scent of earth and moss. Lightning split the sky overhead, briefly illuminating the twisted silhouettes of trees. At the edge of the forest, the boy from the rain waited, his soaked clothes clinging to his thin frame, eyes gleaming with an unearthly light that reflected the storm's fury. His lips parted in a sad, almost pleading smile. "Eli," the boy's voice was barely audible above the storm's roar, "you have to come with me. There's something you need to see, something you need to remember." Eli hesitated, heart pounding. "But what? Who are you?" The boy stepped forward, water dripping from his hair like cold tears. "I'm the shadow of the past, the storm's secret. The rain doesn't just fall, it carries memories, trapped souls. And I'm one of them." Thunder crashed as Eli's resolve wavered. The forest seemed alive, the rain whispering secrets in a language just beyond understanding. "Follow me," the boy urged, voice urgent yet gentle. "If you don't, the storm will never end." With a shudder, Eli stepped into the swirling gray, the rain soaking him to the bone, his world narrowing to the ghostly figure ahead, the key to the house, the storm, and the mystery entwined with his very soul. The rain had soaked through Eli's jacket and chilled him to the bone, but still, he followed the boy into the dark, tangled woods behind the house. Every step sank into the mud, water pooling in the hollows between twisted roots and fallen leaves. The storm's roar wrapped around them like a living thing, the relentless drum of raindrops muffling their footsteps. The boy moved ahead with an eerie grace, silent except for the soft squelch of wet earth beneath his feet. His pale face glistened in the flashes of lightning, eyes bright with an otherworldly glow. Eli's breath came in sharp bursts, cold air filling his lungs as fear and curiosity warred inside him. "Why did you bring me here?" Eli asked, voice trembling. "To show you," the boy said softly. "There's something buried beneath this storm, something the rain tried to wash away. But it's still waiting, for you." They reached a clearing where ancient trees bowed over a small, half-sunken stone well. Rainwater overflowed its cracked edges, pooling on the mossy ground. The boy knelt beside it and traced his fingers over the wet stone, whispering words Eli couldn't understand. Suddenly, the water inside the well began to churn and glow with a ghostly light. Faces flickered beneath the surface, blurred, sorrowful, trapped in an endless storm. "Do you see them?" the boy asked, voice breaking. "They were forgotten, lost to the rain. But they call to you, Eli. They need to be freed." The rain intensified, lightning splitting the sky in a jagged scream. Eli's heart thundered as he stared into the glowing depths, the storm's secret unraveling before him. The storm seemed to lean in closer, the thunder growling like a beast awakened. Rain poured in sheets, washing over Eli and the boy as they stood at the edge of the ancient well, the water inside glowing with an eerie, pulsing light. Eli's fingers brushed the cold, mossy stone, the surface slick with rain and time. His breath hitched as whispers floated from the depths of the well, voices tangled and urgent, carried on the wind. "Eli," they called, soft as the rain but weighted with desperation. "Help us, remember." The boy looked up at Eli, eyes wide, glimmering with sorrow. "They've been trapped here for so long, caught between worlds by the storm's fury. They need you to set them free." "How?" Eli asked, heart pounding. "What do I have to do?" The boy's gaze flickered to the glowing locket in Eli's hand. "That locket, it's the key. It holds the memories, the truth that binds them. But you have to open it, unlock the past." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the clearing with a blinding flash. The rain fell harder, drumming against the stones and Eli's skin. Eli took a deep breath, fingers trembling as he held the locket above the glowing water. The voices whispered louder now, pulling at his mind and soul. With a sudden resolve, Eli unclasped the locket, opening it wide. The storm seemed to still, as if holding its breath. Inside the locket, a faint shimmer began to glow, sending ripples through the water below. Faces in the well grew clearer, children's faces, sad and hopeful. And the rain, relentless and wild, seemed to carry a new song, one of memory, release, and the long-awaited peace. As Eli opened the locket wider, a soft golden light spilled from its clasp, mingling with the ghostly glow of the well's water. The rain, though still pouring, seemed to quiet, as if nature itself was leaning in to witness what was unfolding. Faces beneath the water's surface sharpened, children with wide, frightened eyes, their features flickering like fragile flames in the storm's shadow. Eli felt a strange warmth spread through his chest, a connection threading between him and those trapped souls. Suddenly, the whispers morphed into voices, clear, urgent, pleading. Memories surged like waves in Eli's mind, laughter lost to the wind, promises broken by rain, a terrible night when the storm swallowed the village's children, including the boy who now stood beside him. The boy's voice cut through the flood of images, low and steady. "We were forgotten, left to drown in the storm's sorrow. Only by remembering can we be free." Eli's hands trembled as the locket's light grew stronger. The rain softened, each drop now like a gentle touch against his skin, the storm's anger easing into something mournful yet hopeful. "I won't forget you," Eli whispered, tears mingling with rain on his cheeks. "I promise." The well's light pulsed brighter, faces smiling faintly before dissolving into the rain, carried away on the wind. The storm finally broke, the rain slowing to a soft drizzle as dawn crept over the horizon, washing the world clean. Eli stood alone in the clearing, the weight of the past lifted, the house behind him quiet and still, a sanctuary no longer haunted, but healed. The first pale light of dawn seeped through the dense clouds, painting the world in muted grays and soft blues. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, the storm's fury finally spent but its memory lingering in the damp earth and dripping leaves. Eli stood in the clearing, the locket warm in his hand, its glow faded but its power undeniable. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound silence that felt like a breath held and released. The boy, now pale and translucent like morning mist, smiled gently. "Thank you, Eli. You freed us." "Who were you?" Eli asked softly, voice hoarse from the night's ordeal. "We were children of the village, lost to the storm long ago," the boy said, his form shimmering. "Trapped between worlds, waiting for someone to remember. Eli nodded, eyes heavy but clear. I won't forget. I promise. The boy's figure dissolved slowly into the light, the rain's last droplets sparkling like tears on his fading smile. Eli turned toward the house, the air fresh and clean, filled with the scent of wet pine and earth. The locked door upstairs no longer pulsed ominously but stood quietly, a chapter closed. Inside, his parents waited, their faces worn but relieved. As Eli stepped inside, the soft patter of rain against the windows was no longer a warning but a lullaby, a promise that even storms, no matter how fierce, must eventually end. Eli wiped the rain from his face as he trudged up the muddy path toward the house. The storm had finally spent its rage, leaving behind a world washed clean but still dripping with moisture. Every leaf, every blade of grass shimmered under the pale dawn light, heavy with raindrops that clung like fragile jewels. The wooden porch creaked under his boots as he stepped inside, the familiar warmth of the house wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. The rain's steady murmur against the window sounded less like a warning now and more like an old friend's gentle song. His parents sat in the living room, eyes red-rimmed from sleepless worry. Relief softened their expressions when they saw Eli enter, soaked but safe. Eli, his mother whispered, rushing to wrap a towel around his shoulders. Where have you been? He hesitated, the weight of the night's revelations pressing on his chest. I had to go. I had to remember. His father nodded slowly, eyes distant but understanding. Some things in this house, they need to be faced, not ignored. Eli glanced up at the ceiling where the rain still tapped softly, a reminder of the night storm, a night that changed everything. As the morning light filtered through the curtains, Eli felt something shift inside him. The house was no longer a place of fear but a keeper of stories, of pain, loss, and ultimately, hope. And outside, the rain whispered on, a lullaby for the souls now free. The house seemed to breathe in the quiet dawn, its wooden walls creaking softly as if exhaling after the storm's fierce grip. Eli sat on the edge of his bed, the locket resting on his palm, cool and still, its glow faded but its presence undeniable. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle mist, droplets tapping rhythmically against the windowpane like a soft heartbeat. His mind raced, replaying the night's events, the glowing stone, the whispering voices, the boy's pleading eyes, and the secrets buried beneath the rain-soaked earth. He was no longer just a child afraid of shadows, he was part of something much larger, a link between the past and the present. A soft knock on his door pulled him from his thoughts. Eli. It was his mother's voice, cautious but tender. Breakfast is ready. He swallowed hard, rising to his feet. I'm coming. The locket slipped into his jacket pocket as he opened the door. The hallway was dim, lit only by the pale light filtering through the curtains and the lingering gray sky outside. At the kitchen table, his parents sat quietly, the worry in their eyes softened into something like hope. His father cleared his throat. We've been through a lot, Eli. But you faced it. That takes courage. Eli nodded, feeling the weight of his father's words. I don't think the house will ever be the same, he said. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's meant to change. His mother smiled gently, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. Change isn't always easy. But it's where new stories begin. Outside, the rain fell softly now, a steady rhythm that wrapped the house in a soothing embrace. Eli looked out the window, watching as droplets traced silver paths down the glass. The storm had passed, but its echoes remained, whispers of memory and mystery, lingering like shadows in the light. And somewhere deep inside, Eli knew this was just the beginning. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast and rain-wet earth, a comforting scent after the storm's cold fury. But Eli's mind was restless, the locket's faint warmth pressing like a secret in his pocket. His parents chatted quietly, their voices low, but Eli's thoughts drifted back to the house, to the stone beneath the floorboards, to the whispering well in the woods, and to the boy whose eyes had shone like lanterns in the storm. After breakfast, Eli wandered through the house, boots leaving damp prints on the old wooden floor. The walls, still slick with rain's residue, seemed less threatening now, more alive, as if the house itself was healing. But beneath his feet, something stirred, subtle vibrations that hummed against the soles of his shoes. He paused at the living room, where a loose floorboard near the hearth caught his eye. It was warped, edges swollen from water, but also oddly inviting, like a door waiting to be opened. His heart quickened. The locket tugged in his pocket, urging him forward. Kneeling, Eli pried at the board with trembling fingers. It gave way with a soft creak, revealing a narrow cavity beneath, dark and cool. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in oilskin, heavy with dust and damp. Carefully, he unwrapped the package. Inside was a diary, its leather cover cracked and worn. He opened it to the first page, and the faint smell of rain and earth rose up. The handwriting was delicate, looping, the words of a child long gone, written on a night much like this one. "Tonight the storm will come, and I will hide," the first line read. "But I fear the rain is not just water, it is memory, and memory is a cage." Eli's breath caught. The past was not done with him, not yet. Outside, the rain began anew, a steady pulse like a heartbeat echoing beneath the floorboards, and in the diary's fragile pages, a story waiting to be told. Eli settled into a worn armchair by the window, the diary heavy in his hands as the soft drizzle painted the world outside in shades of gray. The rain tapped steadily on the glass, a gentle percussion that echoed the pounding of his heart. He flipped the fragile pages slowly, the paper crackling softly beneath his fingertips. The handwriting grew darker with each page, no longer just words, but desperate pleas scrawled in hurried, uneven strokes. The author, a boy named Thomas, had lived in the house long ago. His diary told a tale of fear and isolation, of nights filled with whispered voices and shadows that moved just beyond the candlelight. Thomas wrote of a storm much like the one that had just passed, a storm that didn't simply bring rain but something far more sinister. He described how the rain seemed to trap souls, pulling them into a hidden realm beneath the earth, a place where memories became chains and shadows turned to monsters. Eli's eyes widened as he read the chilling passage. The rain is not just water. It carries them, those lost children, those forgotten souls. And the house remembers, holding them captive beneath its floorboards. If someone doesn't set them free, they will remain trapped forever, echoes beneath the rain. A sudden clap of thunder rattled the window panes, making Eli jump. The storm wasn't over. It had only shifted, becoming quieter but no less dangerous. He glanced down at the locket in his lap. It was the key Thomas had written about, the vessel containing memories too heavy to bear. Eli's fingers traced the faded engraving on its surface. A soft whisper drifted through the room, barely audible but unmistakable. "Eli." He looked up sharply, heart pounding. The house seemed to lean in closer, alive with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Eli knew then that his journey was far from over. The diary had revealed only part of the truth. And somewhere in the rain-soaked shadows, the real story waited, darker, deeper, and more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The room grew colder, the warmth of the fire extinguished by a sudden chill that swept through the house like a breath from another world. Eli sat frozen, clutching the diary tightly as the rain outside quickened again, tapping a frantic rhythm against the windowpane. A low murmur rose up from the walls, barely more than a whisper, but unmistakably a voice. It wasn't the wind, nor the creaking timber. It was something else, ancient, sorrowful, and desperate. "Eli," the voice breathed, echoing softly from the dark corners of the room. His heart hammered wildly. "Who's there?" he demanded, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, before the voice returned, closer this time, filled with sadness. "Help us, set us free." Eli's eyes darted around, searching for the source. The walls seemed to pulse, shadows flickering like living things beneath the flicker of the dying candlelight. "Where are you?" he whispered. From beneath the floorboards came a faint scratching sound, slow, deliberate, like nails tracing wood. Eli rose slowly, the diary clutched against his chest. The locket burned faintly in his pocket, as if urging him onward. He knelt at the loose floorboard again, fingers trembling as he lifted it once more. The air beneath was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and something else, something old and forgotten. A voice, clearer now, spoke directly to him. Beneath us lies the heart of the storm, where memories drown and shadows feed. Eli swallowed hard, peering into the darkness below. His breath fogged the cold air as the rain hammered the roof, a relentless, mournful psalm. He knew the walls held secrets darker than any storm. And as the voice faded into the rain's whisper, Eli understood that the house itself was alive, a prison for the lost, waiting for him to unlock its final truth. The night had thickened, swallowing the last remnants of twilight as Eli lifted the loose floorboard once more. A cold draft rose from the hidden cavity, carrying with it the musty scent of damp earth and something far older, an ancient sorrow that clung to the very air. His fingers trembled as he lowered a flashlight into the narrow space. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a ladder carved from gnarled wood, slick with moisture. Below, the hollow swallowed the light, a black void that seemed to breathe beneath the house. Eli, the voice was softer now, but no less urgent. You must come, before the storm takes us all. He swallowed hard, heart pounding as the rain drummed against the roof like a funeral dirge. The locket's warmth pulsed against his chest, a steady heartbeat in the darkness. Gripping the ladder, Eli began to descend, each rung creaking ominously beneath his weight. The air grew colder with every step, thick with the scent of earth and decay. Shadows flickered at the edges of his vision, fleeting shapes that vanished when he blinked. Halfway down, a sudden rush of wind extinguished his flashlight, plunging him into absolute darkness. His breath came in shallow gasps as the voice whispered once more, right at his ear. Remember, Eli, remember the storm's secret. Desperately, Eli fumbled for his lighter, flicking it open. The small flame flickered weakly, casting a dim circle of light around him. In that glow, he saw them, faint shapes, translucent and sorrowful, children bound by chains of mist. Their eyes met his, pleading. Help us, they begged. Remember. A surge of determination filled Eli. The locket in his pocket burned bright, a beacon in the suffocating dark. He took a deep breath and pressed onward, descending deeper into the house's hidden heart, where memories waited to be freed and the storm's true horror awaited its reckoning. Eli's fingers gripped the rough wood of the ladder as he reached the bottom of the hidden shaft. The chamber that unfolded before him was cloaked in shadows, its walls slick with moisture, the air thick with the scent of earth and forgotten memories. The soft drip of water echoed from somewhere deep within the darkness, a slow, rhythmic pulse that matched the beat of Eli's own racing heart. He raised the lighter again, its small flame casting long, trembling shadows on the cracked stone walls. The chamber stretched farther than he could see, filled with broken toys, faded photographs, and fragments of clothing, relics of lives lost to the storm's fury. The air shimmered with a spectral haze, and faint whispers wove through the silence like restless ghosts. A sudden movement caught Eli's eye, a shadow flickering at the edge of the light. He spun, but there was nothing there, only the endless rain dripping through unseen cracks above. Eli. The voice was softer now, a murmur carried on the damp air. You have come. The storm's memory lives here, trapped beneath the earth. Eli swallowed hard. Why were you trapped here? His voice echoed in the vast chamber. The boy appeared then, stepping from the shadows with a pale, sorrowful smile. Because no one remembered. Because the rain kept our stories buried. Eli glanced down at the locket resting warm in his palm. I remembered. The boy's eyes brightened with hope. Then we can be free. Suddenly, the chamber trembled as thunder rolled overhead, rain hammering against the earth like the heartbeat of the storm itself. The spectral children gathered, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. Eli stepped forward, the locket glowing with an inner light, and whispered, "It's time to end this." The chamber filled with a brilliant light, the rain's sorrow turning to a song of release. Shadows lifted, and the storm's grip began to loosen, freeing the souls long trapped beneath the rain. The chamber glowed with a warm, golden light, radiating from the locket that Eli held tightly in his palm. The spectral children, their forms flickering like fading stars, gathered closer, their faces etched with hope and relief. The rain outside softened to a gentle drizzle, the thunder's growl fading into a distant murmur. "You remembered," the boy said softly, his voice like a breeze through wet leaves. "You remembered us when no one else would." Eli nodded, his eyes fixed on the glowing faces around him. "I won't let you be forgotten anymore." The air shimmered, and the shadows that had clung to the chamber began to dissolve like mist under the morning sun. The toys and photographs scattered across the floor seemed to brighten, memories untangling themselves from the darkness that had held them captive. One by one, the children smiled, their chains of mist breaking and drifting away with the soft rain. The boy reached out, his translucent hand brushing Eli's cheek with a warmth that felt like sunlight after a storm. "Thank you," he whispered. Eli felt a strange peace settle over him, a calm that filled the empty spaces left by fear and doubt. The house behind him seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the creaking floorboards and whispering walls quiet at last. Outside, the rain continued, but now it was a gentle melody, a lullaby for souls finally free. Eli stood, the locket cool and still in his hand. He looked toward the ladder, ready to climb back into the world above. The storm had passed, but the echoes of its sorrow had been silenced at last. As he ascended, the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, bathing the world in soft light. The rain washed away the darkness, leaving behind a promise, that even the deepest shadows could be lifted, and the heaviest storms would end in calm. Eli emerged from the hidden chamber, his boots splashing softly in the shallow puddles left by the fading rain. The damp earth smelled fresh, mingling with the faint scent of pine and wet stone. The sky above was a tapestry of grays and pale blues, the storm retreating like a fading memory. The house stood silent behind him, its creaky timbers and weathered shingles bathed in the soft glow of dawn. For the first time in what felt like forever, it seemed less like a prison and more like a home. Eli's fingers brushed the locket in his pocket, now cool and inert, a quiet reminder of the night's supernatural ordeal. He glanced around the clearing, the rain-washed trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. His parents were waiting on the porch, faces etched with relief and exhaustion. His mother's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she stepped forward. "Eli, you're safe." "I'm okay," Eli said, voice steady despite the exhaustion pulling at his limbs. "I freed them." The children beneath the house. His father nodded slowly, a mixture of pride and wonder in his gaze. "You did something no one else could." They stood together on the porch, the fresh air filled with the scent of rain and new beginnings. The storm had left its mark, but it had also cleansed the shadows that had haunted their home for years. Eli looked up at the sky, watching the sun's first tentative rays peek through the retreating clouds. The rain was now a soft drizzle, a gentle reminder that even after the darkest nights, light always returns. "Let's go inside," his mother said softly. "There's breakfast waiting, and maybe, just maybe, a little peace." Eli smiled, stepping back into the house that no longer felt haunted but hopeful. The rain whispered on, a soothing song of healing and rebirth. The house smelled of fresh coffee and warm toast, a stark contrast to the damp earth and cold shadows Eli had faced just hours before. The morning light filtered softly through the lace curtains, casting gentle patterns on the worn wooden floor. Outside, the rain had finally ceased, leaving the world sparkling with droplets clinging to leaves and grass. Eli sat at the kitchen table, sipping slowly from a mug, the warmth spreading through his chilled fingers. His parents exchanged quiet glances over the steaming cups, their faces lined with relief and fatigue. "You were very brave, Eli," his father said quietly, breaking the peaceful silence. "Not many would have dared to descend into the darkness." Eli looked down at the locket resting on the table, its surface dull now but still carrying the weight of memories. "I didn't do it alone," he murmured. "They were with me, the children, their voices guided me." His mother reached across, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. "I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes the past lingers because it needs to be remembered, to be healed." Eli nodded slowly, the truth settling in his chest like a fragile hope. "I think the rain kept them trapped, but it also helped me find them." A sudden crack of sunlight broke through the clouds, sending a shaft of golden light through the window. For a moment, the room was filled with a warmth that felt like forgiveness and renewal. Outside, the world seemed to breathe easier, the heavy cloak of fear lifted. The house, once haunted by sorrow and silence, now held a quiet promise, that even the darkest storms could bring new life. Eli stood, looking out at the clearing where the rain had cleansed the earth. "Maybe now," he said softly, "we can finally be free." The afternoon sun filtered weakly through the thick canopy of wet leaves outside, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. Though the rain had stopped hours ago, the air remained heavy, thick with moisture and the lingering scent of earth and rain-soaked wood. Eli wandered slowly through the garden, his boots sinking softly into the muddy path. He clutched the locket in his hand, its surface cool against his skin, a quiet talisman of the night's events. The house behind him loomed silent, its weathered facade softened by the gentle afternoon light. For the first time since the storm began, there was no sense of dread, only a fragile peace. But as the breeze shifted, Eli paused. A faint whisper rode on the wind, a sound barely audible above the rustling leaves. He tilted his head, listening. "Eli." The voice was distant yet clear, the same sorrowful tone he had heard beneath the floorboards. He took a hesitant step forward, the locket pulsing faintly in his palm. "Who's there?" he called softly, voice trembling just slightly. No answer came, only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds reclaiming the rain-drenched forest. Eli exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Maybe they're gone for good," he muttered. But as he turned back toward the house, a sudden chill swept over him, and the whisper returned, faint, urgent. "Remember." Eli froze. The word hung in the air like a fragile thread, pulling him back into the shadows of the night. The locket grew warm again, a reminder that some stories, some memories, never fully fade. With a determined breath, Eli squared his shoulders and walked toward the porch, ready to face whatever echoes the wind still carried. The sun had dipped low behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the rain-dampened landscape. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint chill that often follows a storm. Eli stood on the porch steps, his gaze fixed on the woods just beyond the clearing, where the trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. The locket in his hand pulsed softly, as if alive with its own heartbeat. The fading light cast its dull glow across his face, revealing a mixture of resolve and unease. Though the storm's fury had passed, Eli knew the darkness within the house wasn't finished with him yet. "Eli," the whisper came again, carried on the wind, more insistent this time. "You must remember." He tightened his grip on the locket. "I do remember," he replied firmly, voice steady despite the chill crawling up his spine. "And I won't forget." The house behind him creaked as if responding, old timbers shifting with secrets long buried. A cold gust swept through the porch, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked leaves and something else, something faintly metallic, like the tang of blood. Suddenly, from the edge of the woods, a shadow moved. Eli's heart skipped a beat. The figure was barely visible, a dark shape blending seamlessly with the twisting branches and falling dusk. His breath hitched as the whisper grew louder, weaving through the rustling leaves. "Remember, remember." "Who's there?" Eli called out, stepping off the porch, boots sinking into the muddy earth. No answer, only silence. The shadow slipped deeper into the trees, vanishing like a breath on the wind. Eli stared after it, the storm's secrets still swirling around him like restless ghosts. The rain had cleansed the earth, but the darkness was far from gone. Night wrapped the clearing in its cool embrace, stars obscured by a veil of lingering clouds. The rain had ceased, but the earth remained sodden, the air thick with the scent of wet leaves and moss. Eli's footsteps pressed softly into the muddy trail leading into the dense forest beyond the house. His breath was steady but cautious. The locket in his pocket throbbed faintly, a gentle pulse guiding him deeper into the shadows. The whispered voices had faded with the storm, but now a new silence filled the woods, an expectant quiet that seemed to hold its breath. Eli, the wind carried a faint murmur, like the rustle of dry leaves, barely audible but unmistakably a call. He paused at a fork in the path, the trees leaning inward like ancient sentinels guarding secrets. The left path was overgrown, tangled with brambles and slick with moss. The right path appeared wider, worn but leading into a dark thicket. Which way? Eli muttered, fingers curling tightly around the locket. The warmth there was comforting but also a reminder, he wasn't alone. A sudden snap echoed from the left, a branch breaking beneath unseen footsteps. Eli's heart quickened. "Come," the voice whispered, beckoning him toward the shadowed trail. Steeling himself, Eli stepped off the main path, pushing through thick underbrush. The rain-dampened branches clawed at his jacket as he moved forward, the world growing darker and colder. The forest seemed alive with whispers, fragments of forgotten stories, voices layered over time like echoes trapped between the trees. Ahead, a faint glow flickered through the mist, an eerie light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Eli's steps slowed, senses alert. The locket burned warmly now, as if urging him on, deeper into the unknown. Whatever waited in the hidden path, Eli knew it was the next piece of the storm's secret, and he was ready to face it. The deeper Eli pushed into the forest, the heavier the air became. The dampness clung to his skin, and the soft rustle of wet leaves whispered around him like secrets passed from tree to tree. The faint glow ahead flickered like a ghostly lantern, wavering in the mist as if it were alive. Eli's breath came in slow, measured bursts, the locket's warmth a steady comfort against the chill that settled deep in his bones. "Who's there?" he called out softly, voice barely more than a whisper. The forest answered only with silence and the distant drip of rain from saturated branches. As he drew closer, the glow solidified into a small clearing bathed in an ethereal light. At its center stood a solitary figure, a woman draped in tattered white, her eyes deep pools of sorrow reflecting the storm's memory. Her hair hung wet and tangled, framing a pale face etched with both grief and hope. "Eli," she murmured, her voice like the rustle of leaves. "You've come. Who are you?" Eli asked, heart pounding. "What do you want from me?" She stepped forward, the light around her flickering like a candle struggling against the wind. "I am the keeper of the storm's memory, the one who holds the stories of those lost beneath the rain." The locket pulsed warmly in his hand, as if responding to her words. "You freed the children trapped beneath the house," she continued, "but the storm's curse runs deeper still. To end it, you must face the heart of the storm itself." Eli swallowed hard. "Where is that?" She pointed toward the darkest part of the forest, where shadows gathered thick and the trees grew twisted and tall. "Follow the path," she said. "But beware, the storm's heart guards its secrets fiercely." Before Eli could ask more, the glow faded, leaving the clearing shrouded in mist once again. The rain's soft patter resumed, a reminder that the night was far from over. With renewed resolve, Eli stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited in the storm's heart. The forest thickened as Eli ventured toward its darkest heart. The trees grew taller, their twisted branches interlocking overhead, blotting out the pale moonlight and casting the path into near-complete darkness. The air was colder here, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. The soft rhythm of rain continued, now a whisper against the thick canopy, like a distant heartbeat echoing through the shadows. Eli tightened his grip on the locket, its faint warmth pulsing steadily, a fragile beacon in the consuming gloom. His breath came shallow, and every step seemed to press deeper into an unseen weight. The whispers that had guided him now faded, replaced by a heavy silence that wrapped around him like a shroud. Suddenly, the path ended at a clearing, a pit of darkness surrounded by gnarled roots and ancient stones slick with moss. The wind howled through the trees, carrying a mournful wail that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Eli stepped cautiously to the edge, peering into the abyss below. From its depths, a chill radiated upward, freezing the air around him. The rain's patter slowed, then ceased, swallowed by the oppressive silence. A voice, low and distant, rumbled from the shadows. "You dare come to the storm's heart?" Eli swallowed his fear. "I have to. To end this." From the darkness emerged a figure, tall, cloaked in tattered black, eyes glowing faintly with storm-lit fury. Its presence was a tempest made flesh, a storm that had taken form. "You carry the locket," it hissed, "but do you understand its cost?" Eli lifted the pendant. "It carries the memory of those lost. I won't let their pain bind anyone else." The figure's eyes burned brighter. "Then face the storm's truth, and be free, or be lost forever." Lightning cracked through the canopy, illuminating the clearing in a blinding flash. The storm's heart had awakened. Eli braced himself, every nerve alive, as the final trial began. The tempest figure loomed, a swirling mass of shadow and lightning that crackled with untamed energy. Eli's breath hitched, the cold seeping deep into his bones as the figure's glowing eyes bore into him. The locket throbbed fiercely in his hand, its warmth fighting against the storm's biting chill. "You think you can undo what the storm has done?" the figure growled, voice like thunder rolling through the void. "This is no simple curse, it is the storm's fury, its rage bottled and bound." Eli's heart pounded, but he stood firm. "I carry their memories, their pain, but also their hope. The storm doesn't own them anymore." Lightning crackled overhead, illuminating the clearing with a ghostly light. The tempest figure surged forward, wind whipping Eli's hair and clothes as the storm's wrath bore down. Suddenly, the world twisted. Eli found himself surrounded by swirling rain and flashes of lightning, the voices of the lost children echoing in his ears, their cries mingled with the thunder. "Remember us," they whispered. "Set us free." Eli closed his eyes, the locket's warmth flooding through him. "I remember," he repeated, voice steady despite the chaos. "I will never forget." The tempest roared, a violent gust sweeping through the clearing, but Eli's resolve did not waver. He lifted the locket high, and a brilliant light burst forth, piercing the storm's heart. The tempest shuddered, then began to unravel, lightning fading, wind dying to a whisper. The voices softened, turning from sorrow to song. Eli opened his eyes to a calm clearing bathed in soft, golden light. The storm's fury was broken. The figure dissolved into mist, leaving behind only peace and the gentle sound of rain returning, soft, cleansing, and free. Eli sank to his knees, the weight of the night lifting at last. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a gentle golden glow through the thinning mist. The heavy shadows of the night retreated, replaced by the soft warmth of morning. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the world fresh and washed clean, each leaf and blade of grass sparkling with droplets like scattered jewels. Eli stood in the heart of the clearing, the locket hanging quietly around his neck. Its warmth was now gentle, steady, a pulse of life and memory, no longer a beacon of torment but of healing. The air was filled with a faint, soothing melody, the distant song of birds returning after the storm, their calls weaving through the trees like a promise. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp, rain-scented air. The weight that had pressed so heavily on his chest for so long was gone, replaced by a fragile hope that shimmered in the new light. Behind him, the forest stirred awake. The trees, once twisted and ominous, now stood tall and proud, their leaves glistening in the sun's embrace. The house at the edge of the clearing seemed softer too, less like a prison and more like a sanctuary, a place where stories could end and new ones begin. Eli felt a gentle breeze brush past him, carrying the scent of pine and earth, and the faintest whisper of the voices he had freed. They were no longer cries for help, but songs of thanks, echoes that would linger only as memories, not chains. He smiled, fingers brushing the locket lightly. "This is the dawn," he said softly, voice filled with quiet strength. "A new beginning." As the sun climbed higher, warming the earth and drying the last of the rain, Eli turned toward the path leading home. With each step, the shadows faded further behind him, replaced by light, by hope, by life. The storm was over. The past was freed. And in the gentle rain's wake, Eli walked forward, into the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Eli's footsteps crunched softly on the rain-softened earth as he made his way back toward the house. The forest around him hummed with renewed life, birds chirping tentatively, leaves shimmering with dew, and the gentle murmur of a small brook nearby. The air was cool but no longer oppressive, carrying a freshness that seemed to wash away the memories of the storm. As he approached the porch, his parents were waiting, their faces a mixture of hope and cautious relief. His mother's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, while his father's jaw was set, proud yet wary. "You look different," his mother said softly as Eli stepped up the steps, the wet wood creaking beneath his boots. "I feel different," Eli replied, voice calm but carrying the weight of what he had endured. "The storm's curse is broken, but the memories remain, not as chains, but as lessons." His father nodded slowly. "You carried them through the darkness. Now, it's time to carry them into the light." Eli glanced down at the locket resting gently against his chest. It no longer pulsed or burned, it was simply a keepsake, a symbol of courage and remembrance. The rain began again, light at first, a soft patter on the leaves, then steady and rhythmic. But this time, it was a lullaby rather than a warning. "Come inside," his mother urged. "There's warmth and comfort waiting." Eli smiled faintly, following them through the doorway, leaving the clearing and the forest's shadows behind. Outside, the rain whispered on, washing away the last remnants of fear and sorrow. The echoes of the storm faded, but the story remained, woven into the earth, the trees, and the heart of the boy who had faced the darkness and walked into the light. The warmth inside the house was a stark contrast to the damp chill that clung to Eli's clothes. The soft crackling of the fireplace filled the room, mingling with the gentle hum of rain against the windows. Though the storm outside had returned in a gentle rhythm, the house felt like a refuge, a place where the nightmares of the night could be left behind. Eli sank into the worn armchair by the fire, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug. His parents sat nearby, their faces still marked by the exhaustion of recent nights but softened by the hope now blooming in their eyes. "You did more than survive, Eli," his father said quietly. "You fought the darkness and came out stronger." Eli nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the dancing flames. "It's strange," he said softly. "Even now, I feel like the shadows are still watching, waiting." His mother reached out, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "That's the way of things sometimes. Shadows linger long after the storm has passed. But they lose their power when you face them." A sudden knock at the door startled them all. Eli's heart jumped. "Who could that be at this hour?" his mother whispered. His father rose cautiously, moving to the door. He opened it to reveal an elderly man, drenched from the rain, eyes gleaming with quiet knowing. "I heard the storm has passed," the man said, voice low but steady. "But some things never truly leave." Eli watched as the stranger stepped inside, the air seeming to grow colder for a moment. "Who are you?" Eli asked, voice trembling but curious. The man smiled faintly. "A keeper of stories. And sometimes, a guardian of secrets." The rain tapped steadily on the window, a reminder that though the storm outside was gentle now, the night's mysteries were far from over. The elderly man settled into a worn chair by the fire, shaking droplets from his cloak. His eyes, sharp and knowing, studied Eli closely. "You've done well to break the storm's hold," he said quietly, voice like gravel. "But remember, storms never truly vanish. They only rest, waiting for a chance to rise again." Eli swallowed, feeling the weight of those words settle like a cold stone in his chest. So, it could come back. The man nodded slowly. The darkness in that house is old, older than any living memory. It feeds on sorrow and fear, but it can be kept at bay by those who remember the light. His gaze softened. The locket you carry is a symbol, a reminder of the strength found in hope and the power of memory. Guard it well. Eli looked down at the pendant, feeling its steady warmth once more. I will. Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, as if the storm itself was taking its final breath. The man stood, moving toward the door. Your journey isn't over. But you've earned a moment of peace. As he left, Eli realized that though the night's darkness might never fully fade, the dawn was his to hold. The rain had almost stopped, leaving the world damp but quiet. Outside the window, the first soft rays of sunlight filtered through the heavy clouds, painting the wet leaves with a pale gold. The storm was truly over, at least for now. Eli sat quietly at the kitchen table, the locket resting gently in his palm. The weight of the night's trial still lingered, but it no longer crushed him. Instead, it felt like a part of him, a testament to everything he had faced, and everything he was determined to protect. His parents bustled about, preparing breakfast with a new lightness in their steps. The house felt warmer, lighter. The shadows that had once seemed to creep from every corner had retreated into the past. Eli looked out the window at the clearing beyond, where the trees swayed softly in the morning breeze. The forest no longer whispered threats, but secrets, old stories carried on the wind, waiting to be told in brighter days. He smiled softly. I'm ready, he whispered to himself. The locket's warmth pulsed steadily, a steady heartbeat of hope. Outside, the sky was clearing, and the promise of a new day stretched wide before him. For Eli, the storm was gone, but the story was only just beginning.